Attorney General Merrick Garland is sort of the chief attorney for the United States. And so when he puts his efforts into something, everybody should sort of pay attention. Well, yesterday, he actually paused to commemorate a very important 6-month anniversary. Now, 6-month anniversary is sort of one of those things that I kind of go, well, it seems a little bit premature to be celebrating anything or to be commemorating anything. What are we talking about here? Typically, you kind of wait for a year, right? And you know that person that you've dated historically, and they come out and you've been dating for a couple weeks, a couple months, and they say, hey, sweetie, what are we going to do to celebrate our 2-month anniversary? You just go, probably end the relationship, right? Not going to continue on with that thing. So when you start to see stuff like this come out from the federal government, it raises an eyebrow a little bit. But what am I talking about? Well, yesterday was January 6th. It was 6 months after that. It was actually July 6th, which of course is 6 months after January 6th. It was the 6-month anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The insurrection heard round the world. The most devastating attack in American history. Almost literally seized control of the country because that guy had the podium and the other guy had his feet on Pelosi's desk, and it was just madness all around. There's still a lot of people who are recovering from that travesty, and we wish them well. Now, I want to show you what is going on with the Justice Department, because we've been seeing for a long time that this has been such a catastrophe that it sort of requires that we marshal all of the resources of the entire federal government, like everybody, every single agency, every single available federal officer, every FBI agent, every U.S. attorney, every single person we can get their hands on to go deal with whatever happened that day. And it's a big, big deal. So when we are 6 months out of it now, we got to look back and we got to just sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, nice job, everybody, for doing such a great job protecting America. So Merrick Garland was out yesterday. He came out on Tuesday, July 6th, said a readout from the Attorney General Merrick Garland's meetings commemorating the 6 months since January 6th, right? So it's a big commemoration. I've been saying this here on this channel that they are going to beat this thing to death. If you think this is a big thing, wait until we have the 1-year anniversary. Oh my goodness, you're going to see all sorts of just commemorations and probably big, long documentaries, and you're going to see a lot of tears and people just weeping all over themselves over what happened. And so now we're just getting started. Just 6 months, we're already at it. Attorney General Merrick Garland this afternoon, he met with U.S. Capitol police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th with the Department of Justice employees who have worked tirelessly to hold accountable those who attacked the Capitol 6 months ago today. So, good for them. They're having their little celebration. The U.S. Capitol Police were very excited about this. They posted this over on Twitter. It says, today, Attorney General Merrick Garland visited one of our roll calls, thanks to our brave U.S. Capitol Police officers, and to give them an update on the January 6 cases. We thank Attorney General Garland, the Justice Department, and all of our law enforcement partners for their support. And so they make this thing like it's a huge, big deal, right? It's a big, big stinking deal that this is, it's going to require all of the efforts of law enforcement. We've seen the FBI on Twitter every day looking for grandma. Can't find her for some reason, but they're still going to just keep reminding us about this. We've got, 18 intelligence agencies that couldn't prevent this. And of course, they're having a difficult time prosecuting these cases because there must have been so many of them, right? This was such a big deal. We're going to get there in a second. But first, we'll just make a quick note. They're taking pictures. They're sort of having fun. It was a roll call event. So Merrick Garland, you've got these other officers just sitting back here pretty much bored out of their minds. Who is this guy? What does he want? What are we doing here? We all know it's just basically a photo op. We're going to see what the rest of Merrick Garland's statement looks like. It's like another, 2 paragraphs. There's nothing going on here. But he goes to their roll call. So all these guys are showing up for duty, and they just sort of parade the Attorney General in right in front of them. These guys are going, oh, what are you talking about? Can we get back to work? Leave us alone. And of course, though, before they leave, they've got to get their photographs in because they've got their scrapbooks that they need to start working on. So we've got, an image here. Everybody wants, hey, pose. And yes, we're doing a great job. And, we're okay, fine. And, okay. So they're having fun with it. And now we see the rest of the statement. So this is the entirety of the statement. It's about, 3.5 paragraphs. So what Attorney General Merrick Garland says is, along with the Deputy Attorney, Lisa O. Monaco, and, there's something I wanted to flag about this. This is very interesting to me. He's very, very supportive of his deputy attorney. We see her name mentioned a lot, right? He's every time that he does something, also with Monaco, which is curious. Don't know if that is too speculative. Maybe he's sort of, training a replacement, or maybe he's going to be slotted into a different position and Lisa Monaco then gets the attorney general role. I don't know, but he is referencing her a lot. And in fact, she makes a lot of these statements on her own. He doesn't really even do it often. We've covered many of these press releases that come just from Lisa Monaco, not from Merrick Garland. My initial thought was maybe that he would be, they were going to try to, I guess, get retribution or payback for not putting Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court, and that maybe they would want to elevate him up into that status. But then I looked at his age; he's 68 years old, so he's too old for that. So it may just be curious, may not be any real reason to it. Anyways, he's saying that the Attorney General and his deputy, they met with investigators, and they met with analysts, and they met with prosecutors and professional staff that's all assigned to the January 6 cases from the FBI's Washington field office and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Okay, so as we go through the rest of this statement, I want you to start to think about like resources. If you needed to build a house or something, you need a certain amount of lumber and a certain amount of electrical wire and a certain amount of concrete to pour the foundation and so on and so forth. Kind of the same concept when you're talking about prosecuting cases, right? When you are dealing with a law firm or a group of prosecutors, you're typically talking about assigning a caseload to a certain attorney. And, it depends on the caseload. If you have a lot of sort of low-level criminal cases, an attorney can handle, even up to 100 maybe cases, depending on how sort of intense they are. Okay, if it's a bunch of sort of traffic violations and things like that, one attorney can handle a large amount of cases because they don't require a lot of work. Now you sort of have the scale that works the other way. You may have an attorney that has a very serious murder case, or some gang-related cases that have multiple co-defendants, and those attorneys maybe have 5 to 10 cases that they work on a year, right? Or a capital punishment case, or something that requires a lot of effort. And so we have to think about that now, because we're talking about a certain number of defendants, and we have a certain number of manpower, or women power, or gender neutral power, whatever that is, that will work on solving this problem. The problem that we're framing out here is that there was an insurrection that happened. There were thousands of people that bombarded the congressional building. And we know, based on the previous stories that we've covered here, that the U.S. Attorney's Office and that the Capitol Hill Police and everybody, the Department of Justice, were having a lot of difficulty actually prosecuting these cases. We're so overwhelmed. This was such a massive problem. We talked about this in the Jacob Chansley case. They actually came out, the U.S. attorneys did, in many of these Capitol Hill defendant cases and said, we need 60-day continuances because we're just so overwhelmed. We can't get it together. And back then, I was screaming, what are you talking about? There's like 500 extra cases coming through here. You guys, the entire U.S. government can't figure out how to move some bodies around so that they can prosecute a few extra cases. Okay, I have a law firm here in Scottsdale, and we can handle 500 cases, no problem at all. So it's one of these things that I'm just kind of shocked that it's been so difficult for the U.S. government to actually prosecute these things, given the fact that they've got the FBI Washington field office, right? The entire field office. They have the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. And I mean, a lot of resources. This is the federal stinking government. They've got every single thing at their disposal, and they had a difficult time, so it didn't make much sense to me. Anyways, during the meeting, Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, they acknowledged the extraordinary work of the dedicated public servants across the U.S. Attorney's offices and the FBI field offices all throughout the country. Now, they're recognizing this work and the recent milestones in the investigation, including the arrest of more than 535 defendants. Okay, so put a pin in that number. 535 people, that's it. This whole thing, 535 people. I'm going to show you what an embarrassing number that is. The Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General encouraged the team to continue to follow the facts in this case and charge what the evidence supports to hold all the perpetrators accountable. Later, the Attorney General visited with members of the Capitol Police where he commended them for their bravery, expressed his appreciation, blah, blah, blah. FBI released 11 new videos of suspects in violent assault, so they're still going after it. They still can't figure it out. Charges contained in any of these things are just allegations. Office of the U.S. Attorney General. Okay, so I mentioned now that I want to sort of compare and contrast the Capitol Hill cases with the Scottsdale City Court cases. Okay, that's where our office is, right in the city of Scottsdale, right in Arizona. So I know exactly how the court works because we are there all the time. We've got many cases that we work out of the city of Scottsdale, and I'm involved in some other areas in the city of Scottsdale, and so I'm very familiar with how this stuff works. I want to show you some data from their public records. Now, you should be able to access this on your own, but let me see if I can, got to pull this up here. what happened to my slide? Apologies, folks. I'm running a little bit on empty over here, just a slight little bit. And so I'm skidding in here. But what I'm going to do is show you my actual slide, or my a spreadsheet that I was able to draft from data from the City of Scottsdale. So let me show you what this looks like here. I have it open. And all of this, of course, is public record. And this is a spreadsheet that doesn't have any personal identifying information. But let me frame this out just a little bit better. So in the City of Scottsdale, right, we're not even one of the bigger cities in Arizona. We've got the city of Phoenix, we've got the city of Mesa, we've got Gilbert and Glendale and all of these other cities. Scottsdale's, it's a moderate sized city, and there's, some criminal activity that goes on here, just like any other city. Every time that there's an arrest, every time the Scottsdale police book somebody into custody or book them into jail, they make a list. It's called a booking list. And all of this all of this information is accessible on the internet. So you can just go and pull it up. And what I've done is I've done that, right? You don't have to be an attorney to go get it, but I put it into a spreadsheet and I organized it a little bit. And the reason I did so is because I want to compare and contrast one city's data, one city, the City of Scottsdale, versus the Capitol Hill police cases. Okay, we know from them that they've got a lot of people working on this. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the entire Department of Justice, we have the FBI, we have probably, many other agencies that are sort of all spiraling into this thing. And we've talked about them here. So we know what resources they have. Let's see what's going on out of the City of Scottsdale. So I want to show you what I did with this data. I know it's going to look like a big boring spreadsheet here, but just sort of bear with me as I explain what's happening. You're going to see here in column B, we have the arrest date. Okay. So what I did is I went through and I scrubbed all of the other dates outside of June. So right now we have June 1. And if we scroll all the way down, you're going to see that these charges just keep going and we're just moving down the month. So now we're on June 10th. We're going to scroll down to June 13th. Keep going to June 17th, keep scrolling down, 6/20 now, we're down to 6/25, and the month wraps up right around 6/27. Okay, so that's when this data ends. And you'll notice that we've gotten down to 636 rows, which means we're going to delete the top row, which means we've got about 635 cases in 1 month. Okay, June, 1 month in June. The City of Scottsdale had 635 arrests or bookings or citations that came through their court. And it's just one city. Okay, we have 4 judges there. We have some temporary judges that are called pro tems that will help periodically. We have about 8 to 10 different prosecutors on average, right? That number sort of fluctuates, but about 2 prosecutors to the court. And so you've got, let's say about a total people of about 15 people plus all of the Scottsdale police. Of course, there are a lot of people there. And so that's the amount of resources that we're talking about. And they are able to handle, in June, 636 cases. Now, the Capitol Hill police, they have been beating themselves over the head trying to figure out how to prosecute 535 cases over the last 6 months. This was in 1 month in June. And so guess what happens next month? Scottsdale has another 500 to 600, sometimes 1,000 cases that come through, and they've got to deal with that. Are the Capitol Hill police going to have another 535 insurrection cases coming through next month? Probably not, because there's not going to be another insurrection. So Scottsdale has to prosecute and process 635 cases basically every month. And sometimes we get these massive spikes where we'll have a waste management open here, or a golf tournament, or the Super Bowl will be here, and everything goes bonkers. And so they have a surge of cases. How do I know that? Because, well, we've got surges of cases too, right? Because when it happens, people get charged. They need good legal representation, so they give our office a call. And this happens year round, all year round. So we have a very small city jurisdiction here that has a fraction, a sliver of the resources that the entire apparatus of the federal government has, and they're able to process through 636 cases a month while these people are struggling with 535. And so I know what the next question, of course, is going to be. Yeah, Rob, but this is a serious thing, right? These are totally different types of offenses. Not really, right? These are sort of trespass charges that we're seeing in the Capitol building. Many of them are being charged as sort of mid-tier felonies and low-level misdemeanors. We've seen some plea deals already come through where basically misdemeanors and probation. So it's the same type of charges. It's a trespass, just like going into being asked to leave a bar in Old Town Scottsdale and not ever leaving. It's a crime, just like it is to enter into a building at the Capitol. It's a different crime. It's a capital crime, and it's something that is prohibited by other federal statutes and things like that. But it's a criminal case. It is the same presumption of innocence, the same burden of proof, the same essentially rules of procedure that you see throughout the rest of the country because they're all based out of the U.S. Constitution. So then you may be saying, well, these are Scottsdale crimes. These are just stupid things where nobody's even arrested, right? Well, let's take a look. So as we know, we've got 636 different counts here, different charges. Let's take a look at some of these things. So we can take a look at column D. We'll see these are the different Arizona statutes, or I'm sorry, no, those are the different report numbers. And then what we can see here are the different actual charges. So in row G, what we have here, we're going to see we've got DUI, let's see, some criminal speeding here, assault touch to injure, recklessly injuring. We have narcotic drugs violation. We've got a dangerous drugs violation, several warrants you can see here, different accidents, burglary in the second degree, drug paraphernalia, armed robbery, which is a good one, prostitution, of course, dangerous drug use, another prostitution, let's see, aggravated assault, impeding the breathing. So that means there was a choking or something going on there. We've got shoplifting, kids underage drinking alcohol, thefts, more dangerous drug uses, and the list goes on, right? You just keep scrolling down. Another burglary, urinating, defecating in public, dangerous drugs, sexual conduct, consensual, a lot of different charges, okay? Many of them more serious than just a simple trespass. So they're able to actually, prosecute some really serious crimes. Whereas here, they're just sort of, you entered a building improperly and you caused some damage, right? More analogous to a trespass or a disorderly conduct or even a criminal damage. One of those things, of course, I think would all be appropriate. But here we've got, dangerous drugs. We've got, what's this one? Drug paraphernalia, resisting arrest. Okay, so those all get, controversial. Child abuse, vulnerable adult abuse, aggravated assault. The list goes on. So the city of Scottsdale and their police department and these prosecutors, they're able to just motor through these cases month after month after month after month. And is it more complicated because they have to make these arrests, or are they able to process more because they're not actually booking people? They're just giving them citations. It's not that big of a deal. They just stop you and give you a citation, and they're not actually arresting them, like having to find these people and arrest them and book them and have detention hearings like Chansley and all of these other people. It's sort of it must be just a kind of a lower level thing, right? No, all of these people are getting booked. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Let's take a look over here in column E now. Booked, without a warrant, booked, cited in lieu of detention. But look at all these bookings. Okay, booked. Probably 70 to 80% of these people are actually booked into jail, which means they get arrested, handcuffed, taken into custody. Now, there is a little bit of a difference here because these are local offenses. And the other offenses, sort of are scattered throughout the country. But what happens when that happens, of course, is they just issue a warrant for you. So they don't actually have to go and track you down. If you come to Scottsdale and, you get booked and you leave or you get cited, they just issue a warrant here. See all these warrants, right? Warrants for everybody going through here. Now, there's some other very good data. You can see what the location looks like. And, there's some other stuff I want to share with you, not because it matters. Okay, I think the point's been made here that the Capitol Hill Police are prosecuting 535 cases. It's been taking them 6 months. They have to have these commemorative little events where they pat themselves on the back and take their scrapbook photos with each other. Very excited about the work that they've done. Meanwhile, we've got different defendants who are sitting in custody. We're going to talk about Jacob Chansley in the next segment, who just got denied bail for the third time. And they also asked for continuances in his case because they said, well, we're just so overwhelmed. We just can't handle this all. This was the worst attack on American democracy that we've ever seen. And so we just need more resources. And the judge go, oh, yeah, you're right. Totally. You need more time because you don't have the entire federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI and everybody. So we're going to give you 60 days. Good luck. We know you're overwhelmed. Meanwhile, right here, the court's right here. It's like 6 minutes down the road. They prosecute 600 cases every month, and they send some of these over to the Superior Court downtown if they're going to be felonies and things like that. But it's very, very possible to easily do this. It's not even complicated. But our federal government, of course, has a hard time with it for some reason. It's actually kind of embarrassing. I was expecting this number to be in the thousands of arrestees 6 months later. It's not. It's 535 people. And several of those that we have seen, we've talked about here on the show. We've actually discussed their charges. They're not even related to anything that happened on January 6th. We've covered several cases where people showed up the next morning or later at the night when they were back inside counting the votes, and they're all being prosecuted. So I think if you went through this and you went through all 535 cases, you'd probably see that a lot of these are just outright garbage cases. Shouldn't ever be brought. They're political prosecutions through and through. And, they should be embarrassed for themselves, quite frankly, to sort of puff this up as this is a big, overarching endeavor that requires all of the resources of everybody from throughout the country for 535 cases. It's embarrassing, man. I mean, if I was a prosecutor, they could have called my office and we could have handled 535 cases like that, but they didn't, and I wouldn't do it anyways because I'm not a prosecutor. Those people are terrible. All right, so let me show you some of the other good data that is in here, just coming from the city of Scottsdale. Just because it's interesting, not that you care too much about it, but I want to show you sort of what I do with this data, and I think you might find it somewhat interesting. So if you take a look at all of the different crimes that occur throughout Scottsdale in the last month, so in June, you can see that they sort of break down into this pattern. So I wanted to just show you, you might see things like this similar in your city, but what we see here, we have sort of the highest offense is DUI, as you might expect. DUI impaired to the slightest degree, 60 of those in June in Scottsdale. Drug paraphernalia, we had 52 of those in Scottsdale. We had criminal speeding violations, a lot of those, 42. And then we sort of just kind of bounce around. Dangerous drugs were very high, 26 of those. 29 driving on a suspended license, which is a class 1 misdemeanor, which is the same as a DUI, which is insane, but it's the law. Narcotic drugs violations. And you'll notice this one, 10 different sexual conducts with minors under the age of 17 years old. So that number is a little bit higher than usual. More DUI, drugs, some of the lower tiers. Let's see what this one is. Failure to obey a police officer, that's one. Indecent exposure, that's one. Failure to appear, handbill distribution. Someone was handing out some stuff. That is a crime. And so, of course, just kind of some interesting data. And we use this for some of our marketing. We use this to sort of, do outreach. We have no qualms about marketing. I say this frequently, right? If we're the best law firm in the state of Arizona, if only we can help people, then we've got an obligation to go make sure they know about us, because there's a lot of other lawyers out there who are not good, and they have a very vocal voice on billboards and on TV commercials and things like that. So we're a little bit more tactical, I think, with how we interface with our community, but this data is also interesting. Also wanted to show you this quickly before we go. Some more data here. If we take down all of those charges and we sort of break them down into charts, I wanted to show you what it looks like. So 73% of the arrests are male in Scottsdale and 26% are female. So it's men who are breaking the law out here. And then if you break it down by race, the vast majority of them are white. Okay, so we've got about 500 so whites have been arrested. Black accounts for about maybe even less than 100, then I think that is going to be Indian and then Asian. So very, very few Asian arrests took place. And then this is just sort of a breakdown of the different districts where they're located. Scottsdale has 4 different districts, and they're sort of stacked throughout the city. So some interesting data there. I thought you might find that somewhat interesting. I'd be curious to see what some other cities look like, but I don't have those numbers. So the big question, of course, is why are they doing this? Why are they puffing this up? Why are they making this whole thing about 535 cases? And, we got to have a anniversary party to celebrate our relationship right after 6 months. And they're going to continue to do this. Well, it's because it's about power, right? And they get a lot of money, a lot of funding. They get to exercise political control. They get to talk about things like gun violence and white supremacy and making sure that we don't have to worry about domestic violent extremism and domestic terrorism and all these things. So they're just going to keep milking this thing indefinitely. And you're going to see how, like a bad cancer, this just continues to spread throughout the country, which I've been saying it's going to. Joe Biden's big pro law enforcement wants to make sure they are everywhere, has been doing that for the last 40 years. And now the Capitol Hill police are going to be expanding as well, right, throughout the country. We don't have enough local and federal law enforcement agencies like the DEA, ATF, FBI, and on and on and on. Now we're going to have the U.S. Capitol Police showing up in your city. LA Times is telling us that the U.S. Capitol Police are to open a California office following the January 6th attack. So this was published yesterday by Sarah Wire over at the LA Times. This is why they're doing this. The U.S. Capitol Police announced that the agency was opening regional field offices in California and Florida to investigate threats to members of Congress in the wake of the January 6th attack. So did they mean like January 6th threats or just threats in general? Because it sort of reads to me like after the fact, right? In the wake of the January 6th attack. Like it happened, threats made in the wake after, right? The boat drives through the water and then the wake flows behind the boat. So the insurrection happened and now we've got threats to members of Congress in the wake. And so now this is not even in response to anything that happened on January 6th. This is just because there are ongoing threats. Threats against members of Congress, they say, have increased. As of Tuesday, total threats in 2021 were double what they were a year ago, according to the Capitol Police, which, of course, would the Capitol Police have any conflict of interest there in reporting those numbers? Like, would it serve them if the numbers were higher so that they could get more funding and so that they could have more offices and everybody could get a promotion? Maybe. I don't know. Home to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy, who's in Bakersfield, and other prominent members of Congress, California gives the law enforcement agency a Western base to investigate claims of threats made against members. The state is home to the nation's largest congressional delegation because it's a big state. Yeah, it's got a lot of people over there. So now California is going to be home to the Capitol Hill Police in California, even though Capitol Hill's over in D.C. Let's see what else is going on from the LA Times. They're going to tell us that the field offices in Tampa and San Francisco is where they're going to be. At this time, they tell us Florida and California are where the majority of our potential threats are currently, but your state is certainly coming next. The field offices will be a first for the department. A regional approach to investigating and prosecuting threats against members is important. So we'll be working closely with the U.S. attorney's offices in those locations. Okay, well, that's good. So are they going to be able to prosecute more than, 10 cases a year? Maybe that'll be good. Hopefully they'll improve their efficiency. The new field offices are among the changes made since the attack 6 months ago, in which Capitol Police were quickly overwhelmed by thousands of pro-Trump supporters, hundreds of whom were able to break into the Capitol building, forcing members to halt certification. Got all that. Other changes spurred in part by congressional investigations and reports by the department's internal watchdog include what else? Increasing training for officers, improved intelligence gathering efforts, and protocols for reporting sensitive information, new equipment, and new technology for officers. So they are just coming in hot right off of this insurrection. They're going to just gobble up as much power as they can, and they're working hard for it. The police agency rarely provides information to the public on how it operates, citing security concerns and member safety. So not only are they going to do this, you can't even see how it works. For example, unlike other government agencies, the internal watchdog's reports are not publicly available. Oh my goodness. So I always make fun of the police for investigating themselves and finding that they didn't do anything wrong, right? Hey, no, we checked. It's good. We're perfectly good. Isn't that right, Joe? That's right, Lou, it is. Okay. And so now the Capitol Hill Police are sort of even a one tier above that. It's like you don't even get to ask them anything. Why? Because they're the Capitol Hill Police. And our oligarchs out there, the Congress people, they're so special that they need special rules for them because they're sort of above everybody else, as we all know now. A spokesperson over from the Capitol Hill Police did not answer questions on Tuesday about how many staff would be hired or what the cost to taxpayers would be. Spokesman said other regional officers were, oh my gosh. The spokesperson said other regional offices were expected. So they are coming down hard. Very few members of Congress are accompanied by security outside the Capitol. It's unclear if the new offices will be primarily investigating threats against members or whether it will also help when security is needed in the state. Okay, so it's not even just for investigating threats against members of Congress. It also could be for help when security is needed in the state from the Capitol Hill Police. Isn't that interesting? Wow, what a weird world we're living in. The Capitol Hill Police have jurisdiction to investigate all threats made against a member of Congress. So whatever they want, jurisdiction, anywhere they want to go. That's your Capitol Police. That is why we are making so much of the insurrection, is because they can, and it's very useful to them. So let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com over in the live chat. So let's see who we have coming in here. We've got Engineer 12V says, y'all know that communication over unsecured services is monitored by the government. God knows. So he's got a warning everybody in the locals chat, to be careful over there. Be Brave says, it's legit, guys. The exercise is planned for July 9th. I don't know when they'll go live with it. Oh, so there's something going on over there. Let's see what else we have. We're going to scroll back down. We've got the zombies are out there, says Be Brave. Jeremy Matreed is in the house. He says, so to be honest about why the Democrats always exaggerate the truth is they are compulsive liars. It may sound harsh, but the truth will set you free. But first, it will make you mad. Yeah, Farmer's Daughter says, I loved California, left it years ago. Such a shame. Sharon Quidney says, I've seen it go downhill for some time. Good to see you, Sharon. Relic Hunters here saying hello. We've got Jupaz in the house, says, sounds like Biden's America is a police state. Well, it's looking like that, right? Because what's happening? We went through this yesterday on the show. We were talking about China and Hong Kong and how they sort of slowly started to unravel some of Hong Kong liberties away from them. There was sort of that three-tier approach that you needed. One, of course, is to seize control of the courts. The next would be to seize control of the, what was it? I think the third one was seizing control of the speech. So it was the courts. Oh, then it was the election. Then it was the speech, right? So you say, first of all, we're just going to sort of criminalize a bunch of activities, which they're working on here. Then next, what we're going to do is try to sort of seize control of the elections. We're going to federalize the elections, which is what they're doing here with HR 1. And then, of course, you have what was the last one? I just said it. Seizing control of criminal law, the elections, and speech. And then in China, they got rid of it was Apple's news, one that was the most pro-democracy news, or the most, I would say, free speech news that was there in Hong Kong. They're gone. You can't speak anymore. So same thing, of course, is happening here. That's why Donald Trump is filing a class action lawsuit, which we're going to talk about in the last section of the show. Let's see here. We've got Miss Lucky says, hi, Rob. Who is paying for all of this? What a waste of money. Doesn't the FBI have offices all over? They've got everything. They're everywhere. The FBI are everywhere, literally. I think in every state easily, okay? And they've got thousands of employees. So do the U.S. attorney's offices, okay? They dwarf anything that exists in a local city municipality. Unlimited funding, unlimited people, and they're having a difficult time prosecuting 535 cases. Or let's say you double that. Let's say you triple it. Oh my goodness. Wow, they've got a lot of work on their hands. 1,500 cases. Oh, wow. We're going to need to just sort of drop everything and reorient the entire government because we can't handle that. Scottsdale could handle that, right? We have Super Bowls here. We have any one of these cities could handle it. What they're doing is they are making this, and it's all about the politics so that they can continue to expand their footprint. Three Girlies is here, says, wait, they need a credible threat to have jurisdiction. Seems like they will be making up some threats to get the jurisdiction to overreach. So you can just presume that now. So they are granting themselves sort of unlimited jurisdiction. So they're going to plop them in your city so that they can go and say, well, we're going to be there to address threats against members of Congress. But then simultaneously, if we need to be available for other security mechanisms, well, we can be available for that too. And of course, these field offices are going to need money to function. And of course, they're going to need employees to man the field offices. And so that budget's going to go up. And then once they get it working in California and Florida, they're going to need to put them in other states throughout the rest of the country. Then you have the National Capitol Hill Police Force in your localities. So it's a good trend. Now, all right, I guess that's where things are going now. I'm Not Gas says, probably an end goal, but it takes a lot of infrastructure to get that rolling. TOS Forever says, do you think this is to replace the state and local police to have a national police? You know, I have always been somebody who was sort of skeptical about that idea. But I think that it sort of is in alignment with a lot of the other patterns that we're seeing. They want to federalize national elections. We're seeing trends about sort of a federalization of not the police force, but sort of the police standards, which would be the first thing that you would do in that line of dominoes before you would ever nationalize the police force. You'd want to make sure that you are sort of nationalizing the standards, right? And the justification for doing that is that we have criminal justice reform problems around the country. We have George Floyd's, we have Ray Shard Brooks and Breonna Taylor's. And the problem is, according to these people, is that it's too ununiform. There are too many variables there. In Minnesota, they've got certain standards. In Missouri, they've got different standards. And so we need to nationalize this so that there are equal standards across the board so that we don't get knees on the necks. And of course, that is the bureaucratic solution to virtually everything. It's just, more rules, more government, more standards, more regulations, more rules, more laws, more enforcement, blah, blah, blah. And it typically never works. So that may be sort of the first attempt, is to nationalize the standards. And then after that, we sort of see more of a tendency to nationalize the police force. And maybe once people get comfortable with the Capitol Hill Police in their backyards, it becomes less of something that is problematic. And remember this, Obama said this in one of his early speeches. This was viral a long time ago. Obama said, we need a national police force that is just as strong, that is just as well funded as everything else, right? A civilian police force or whatever he said. So I think that this is part of, if we're always going to be having this battle between local governments and federal governments, which we're seeing take place, okay, and it's not just me saying that. There are governors around the country that are saying, no, we're not following your stinking rules. Come enforce it if you want to. And we've talked about enforceability here, right? I think it was Missouri. That governor said, if you come in here and try to enforce federal gun laws, we're going to fine your federal agents $50,000 a pop every time they do it. And the Justice Department responded and said, you can't do that. There's a supremacy clause thing going on. So now you sort of have this kind of soft, kind of pseudo rebellion thing going on here where they're just saying we're not going to enforce those laws anymore. Well, that's fine so long as the federal government doesn't come and try to enforce them. Okay, that technically their laws reign supreme in a lot of situations because of the supremacy clause. But the problem with that has always been enforceability. They may have it right in courts, in the court of law, but they can't actually go out and enforce the laws across all of the different states. And so states are recognizing that. And when that happens and you start to see states sort of push back on the feds a little bit, they're going to respond. And how are they responding? By saying, well, we're just going to put a bunch of federal police in your states now, and we're going to see how you like that. Okay, what's Missouri going to do if they put them in there and they start prosecuting gun crimes? We'll see. All right, we've got I'm Not Gas says, remember, Rob, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Major eye roll on that one. And I saw that there. Let's see what else we've got. We have Sharon's here. We got TOS Forever here. Good to see everybody. Joe Snow's in the house. He says, have people seriously not realized that America is under attack from within? Yeah, the enemy within, right, is oftentimes stronger than the enemy without, because you know who the enemy without or outside is. Oftentimes, you don't know who the enemy within is, and I think it is certainly concerning. So great questions. Thank you so much for all of those coming in from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Really appreciate all the support over there. And before we move on, quick reminder that I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group. You can see our sign right there. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We offer free case evaluations for anybody who's facing criminal charges and just needs a little bit of help working themselves through the justice system. We want to help them through that because we help people get amazing outcomes. And the main thing, our mission here is to provide safety, clarity, and hope to good people facing criminal charges. And so that's our phone number, 480-787-0394, or we're online at rrlawaz.com. And if you don't need any criminal legal services, that's a good thing. Maybe you're interested in some educational materials, in particular, my law enforcement interaction training, which is available over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. It's a 2.5-hour training where we talk about the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's the only rule. It's going to cover most situations. I think it's well worth your while. That way, if you use that, you never have to get a criminal lawyer in the first place. It's good thing to know. All right, and so those were all great questions. Thank you, everybody, for your support. I really do appreciate it.